Welcome everyone to the next podcast in the Offbeat podcast series brought to you by Team onRec, the official podcasting club of IIT. Today, we have with us Mr. Arindam Mukherjee, who is the co-founder and CEO of NextLeap, a leading edtech startup. He has been an IITKGP and Harvard Business School alumni. He started his career as a product manager in 2007, making him one of the first few product managers in India. I'm honored to welcome you today here, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Bhumika. Yeah.
So let's kick off today's podcast with the very first question. So you did your bachelor's in industrial engineering back in 2009. So could you walk us through the campus journey as how your college life turned out to be?
I actually graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 2007. So, wow, that's quite a long time ago. I was in the dual degree program in industrial engineering. So, entered IIT Kharagpur in 2002, graduated in 2007. I think in IT, as with all IITians, I think it's mostly a campus life that you're leading. And after 2 years of slogging before getting into IIT, I thought like, okay, I'll just chill out a bit and kind of embark on a lot more extracurricular extracurricular activities. That's what I did back then mostly. I got elected as the head of the students body as well in my fourth year. So pretty busy campus life, I would say, at that point in time. Everything apart from a lot of acads. I think I just used to do the bare minimum of the academic side of things. But yeah, I think on the extra academic front, really exposed myself to things which I wanted to do, be that on the sports front or overcoming my stage fright by getting into choreography or dramatics clubs and performing on stage or organizing events through a spring fest and all of that. And then finally kind of leading the overall campus community as well, being the head of the student body there, working on the placement side of things, a bunch of different things that I did. And I think have very fond memories of Kharagpur. And I think it's really shaped me up to be the person that I am today.
That's actually quite interesting. Like, could you walk us through times that like all of this seems like you try to do a lot of things. So obviously when you try to like put your hands like into different fields, you're pretty confused as to what you want to narrow down to or what you want to like focus on. At that point in time, what were your lows like and how did you deal with those lows?
I'm not quite sure if there were lows as such out there. I think I really have very good fond memories of campus life there because I think I really approached a lot of things with an open mind. And obviously, when you are learning and growing with a smart bunch of individuals surrounding you, your peers basically, and your seniors as well, you get to learn a lot from them. And I think I don't think I thought too much about the placement side of things or anything like that. I was largely trying to figure out how I can learn outside of my departmental stuff and more of get an exposure to what the industry requirements are and interacting with a lot of people from the industry, like our alumni, seniors, and getting a more holistic perspective of how to think about things. And I think that really exposed me to a lot of opportunities, which I don't think a lot of my other peers on campus were thinking about at that point in time. Because back then, just to give you an idea, I think most people were focused on either the GRE or the CAT. And I was preparing for my GMAT, and I think I was the only person on campus back then who was taking the GMAT. Because back then, thinking about going to business school abroad was not that big of a thing. Like, especially on campus, people would not think about that. Most people on campus would think about preparing for CAT. but I had actually been doing my research quite a bit and came to know about this program at HBS, like Harvard Business School, which said like college seniors, as they call it, are encouraged to apply, and even if you get rejected, you will get feedback on your application, and your application fees is going to be waived off. And which I thought was very interesting. I was like, okay, there's nothing to lose out here, so let me kind of give it a shot. And anyway, like it's a test, GMAT, I better give it right now than later. And one thing led to another. I applied and got an interview call and kind of got lucky to get an admit. So yeah, I think those are things which I don't think a lot of people on campus knew about. And I think right from the beginning, I was trying to figure out how I can do something differently as compared to do exactly what the rest of the folks were doing. So yes, I think my approach was slightly different on campus, and I think I got to expose myself to a lot of different stuff out there.
Sounds pretty interesting. Like, so currently, what do a lot of college students do is that they attach a lot of value to what they want to do in the future, etc. So, like, and then comes the subsequent pressure that comes along with it, right? So, like, what's your take on that? That college, like, what should college students then focus about? Should they like continue exploring themselves, or like, what sort of a principle do you think that they should follow?
I largely think when we were on campus, obviously, kind of uh, like we did not have access to that much of information. Obviously, we had access to the internet, but back then, I think there's not a lot of content which was available online, which now it is, right? So there's so much of information that you can access, which can help you make better choices. But I think what I see most people now on campus are like they're very fixed on this particular career or that particular career very early on and are not very open to looking at all the different things available in front of them, right? And I think that's one of the things which I've learned in my career. Like you take the first few years to really figure out what you really want to do. uh, Very rarely would someone know exactly what they want to do. Obviously, there will be some people, but very few people would know exactly what they want to do and what they would know and know that what they would enjoy doing, right? So you take a few years to figure that out. And I think a lot of the folks right now are chasing jobs and not chasing careers. I think that's a major difference in mindset, I would say. It's not that earlier it did not exist. Earlier, also, people used to think about the first job out of campus and things like that, but they were more open to the different possibilities, which is why kind of earlier, like a lot of my peers who were like, I have a friend of mine who was from the ocean engineering and naval architecture department, and he's right now working at NVIDIA, right, building out chips and whatnot, right? So you can
Okay.
see how kind of diverse that is, and you would have heard a lot of stories about people from Kharagpur going on to the Bollywood side of things as well, like Jeetu Bhaiya and all of them, right? So you can see like they went behind what they really enjoy doing. And they're very open to those possibilities. And I think that's an important mindset to have because you take some time to figure out what you want to do and what you would enjoy doing, right? So allowing for that flexibility is, I think, is an important part, and which means you should not close a lot of doors early on. Keep a lot of doors open and explore, try to do different things on campus and try to find what you are really good at and what you are enjoying uh, as part of the process. I think that would also help you take that stress, as you called it, away from yourself, right? So that you're not putting a lot of pressure on yourself to go and get that job, because you have a long career in front of you, at least 35 years. So why put that pressure on those first 1 or 2 years, which is anyway a job which 9 out of 10 people would change in the first 1 or 2 years, right? So why put that much of focus or stress on that? And I think that's one of the things which people miss out on. If they speak to their seniors or their alums, they would realize that that first job is usually very short lived for most people. Very few people who would stick on to that first job for the next 4 5 years, right? Most people would switch jobs at least once in the first couple of years after college, right? So if that's the case, why unnecessarily take that much of pressure on yourself? So yes, I think that's basically the one thing which I'd say: focus on that long term versus the short term.
Mm-hmm. It was something very similar to that, right? Like you are good at something, you need to identify what you actually like, and then you need to find out like what society needs from you. So then you find that one area that already this is something that you could excel at primarily.
Yeah, like obviously there are those ikigai frameworks and all of that, but without going too much into that, at the end of the day, you want to do something which you would enjoy doing, and it takes some time to figure that part out, right? Very rarely would someone know exactly what they enjoy doing, and what all are the possibilities out there, right? So I think that's the exploration which people will have to do in the first few years, and which is why kind of, if you think about it more with an experimental mindset, that okay, I'll try this and I'll try the other things also and try to understand what I'm really enjoying, I think it'll bode really well for a lot of folks. Yeah.
So in this whole process of experimenting different things and trying to find out what exactly is for you, when did you exactly decide that you will go up for MBA? And what was your rationale in switching up from like engineering to business?
I don't think I decided to go for an MBA at that point in time. It kind of happened a bit by accident as well. Um, so what happened was, like, as I said, like I just came across this thing. I was just researching different schools, as most people on campus would do, look at the different options post kind of college. And I was just researching and came across this article which said that okay, college seniors get this kind of benefit, and uh, at Harvard Business School if they apply. And I thought, okay, there's no harm in applying. I think one of the things which I think I was very clear about though was that after going through that grueling um, phase of preparing for the IIT JEE, where you are really slogging it out and you are coming onto a place where everyone's like you or perhaps better, and it's kind of a very hard like mentality of sorts. And I just did not want to go for a same repeat experience again for whatever my next educational degree would be. And I wanted to break away from that, and I was always searching for opportunities for that, right? um, because I really feel like the amount of effort that went in to get into IIT and the kind of education I received, I think there was a big mismatch of kind of expectations, I would say. So I just did not want to spend another few years going through a similar kind of an experience, which is one of the reasons why I started looking for what all are the options outside of those common options that are there. And that's what led me to that research. And I kind of discovered that HBS was having that. And interestingly, I applied only to HBS. I did not apply to any other business school because, as I said, it was more uh, via accident that it happened. Like I just saw like this is the thing. I was like, okay, let me give it a shot. There's nothing to lose out here. I get the feedback. I don't pay anything for the application fees, um, and at least I'll know what the process is like, right? So that's basically how it happened. Um, and as I was doing my research about business school while writing the essays, I realized that that kind of a learning experience was very different from what I had been through at IIT. Like, for example, it's the case method, no books, nothing, right? It's a very participatory kind of a discussion based style of learning, a very hands on kind of a learning method. which I thought would be very interesting and very different from what I was used to in the educational system in India. And I think that's what appealed to me at that point in time when I was applying. So yes, I think that's what led to the application process. And obviously, it helped that I was one of the very few people who was applying from India at that point in time. So I think that worked out quite well as well. So yes, it's not that I had set my mind that I want to do an MBA or anything like that. It was more by accident that this happened. But maybe I was very clear about what I don't want to do. I was very clear I don't want to do a master's in engineering or anything like that, because I just felt like, okay, I did 5 years of engineering out here. I don't know what I really learned on the engineering front of it. Uh, and I did not want to spend another couple of years there. So that's one thing which I was very sure I did not want to do. What I started realizing throughout campus, what I was enjoying and what I was, I think, fairly good at was, after having led Fest and the student body and all of that, I felt like I was enjoying that process of leading a group of people, of kind of organizing things, like building something. I think those were things which I started kind of realizing those were good things. Like those were things that I was enjoying, and I was getting that signal again and again that maybe the business roles would be a better fit for me as compared to kind of anything on the engineering side there, right? So yes, I think riding on those signals, I felt like it was all pointing towards kind of a degree like an MBA, but I was not absolutely kind of sure, okay, this is what I want to do. I was very clear on what I did not want to do. I did not want to do a 2 year master's in engineering. I did not want to do another degree from a similar educational system in India. Those were things I did not want to do. And it was more like closing out options versus kind of selecting options. So I think that's basically how the process worked for me. Yeah.
So in the retrospective, if you think of it like closing the doors on IIMs, like played out as a very huge factor in your life. But in general, like for students who are like still confused as to what should they be doing, should they be banking on something like a single goal, or should they like have a bag of goals where they're like trying to prepare for all of these different segments? Like, what's your take on that?
So I think in today's world, I think things are quite different, because at that point in time, again, I applied almost 15 years ago, right? So it's very different times at that point in time. So uh, right now, if someone tells me that, okay, I'm looking to go for an MBA, my immediate next question would be why? Why are you looking to spend 2 years on an educational degree which is gradually losing its relevance in today's world? And why do you want to spend so much money, right? Because an MBA education is quite expensive, especially if you're going after some of the top schools in India or abroad. Why do you want to spend that much money versus, like, look at your opportunity cost? You can spend those 2 years working and get much more real like experiences compared to what you would get in a classroom. And most people don't have a very clear idea about that, the why part of it. Earlier, if you look at it, most people used to go for an MBA to switch careers, right? That was one of the major reasons why people used to go.
Right.
Someone would go from an ITC and then they would go to business school and go into consulting, right? Because those were the bigger pay masters at that point in time, like consulting, IBANs, etc. Those were the bigger pay masters, and otherwise you would not be able to shift from an ITC directly to a McKinsey or say
Right.
a JP Morgan, right? So they would use the MBA as a bridge to get to a very different career option, right? Uh, in today's world, uh, that is not quite the case. Again, if you're looking to switch careers, then it is perhaps still a valid option. but a lot of people do it without knowing why they want to do it. Like for them, it's not about switching careers.
Mhm.
They are basically chasing a higher compensation of sorts, right? And they don't know what that compensation might be or where it might
Right.
come from. And which is why the default option that comes to them is like, okay, consulting and iBanking again. And they miss out on the fact that there are a lot of other options in today's world which can actually give you a much higher compensation as compared to consulting or iBanks, right? Um, so I think that uh, part of connecting the dots is something which I find a lot of people missing in today's world, especially with so much of information that they already have access to, which in our time we did not have access to that much of information, right? Because there's nothing like a tech career back then. It was either general management or you have consulting or you have banking or consumer product goods, right? CPG or FMCG, brand management.
Mm-hmm.
So these are kind of the 4 or 5 major options that used to be there back then, but now there are a lot more options on the table as well, and which is why I say like exposure to uh, those different kind of options and knowing exactly what those mean and what kind of careers are there in these functions is a very important data point to have for today's youth, right? Because it will help them make those informed decisions as they move forward in their career. Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about, say, exposure to all of these different avenues, with that exposure comes a lot of, say, confusion itself, right? So when you're like talking about eliminating options, you're not effectively able to eliminate a lot of them till you like deep dive, like the Dunning-Kruger effect,
Yeah.
effectively, that you feel
Yeah.
like, all right, you're doing good, you like this field, but then
Yeah.
there comes that valley, right? So how does one like, what is like something that you figured out or like you've learned from students, like how do they go around with that entire exploration in general?
I think there are different avenues available, right? I've seen people try to take up internships or do some side projects while on campus. Um, Even talk to seniors a lot and alumni a lot, right, to form that point of view. Um, I think these are things which will give you a lot of data points for you to make your decision on. Like, for example, if you're having a conversation with your alum, you can understand what the kind of career path is, what are the kind of skill sets required, and things like that, right? So that is more from an informational standpoint. You will get a lot of that information that is required. With a kind of a side project of sorts, you can understand what this role might entail, right? And you are doing it at your own pace and you can try it out. And then with an internship, you can actually figure out what it is actually like in the real
Fair.
world to figure out is there a gap of expectation versus the reality part of it, right? So, and I think these 3 avenues, if you utilize them really well, you'll be in a good position to understand whether you like doing this or you don't like doing this. I think the question which most people I've seen, and including myself also, what we struggle is what seems appealing initially. After a few years, people realize, no, I don't want to do this forever, right? For example, a lot of people I've seen like were very good coders, and for them it was like, okay, I would want to go into Microsoft or Google, and then they realize that, oh, but I don't want to be coding day in and day and like day in and out, like forever in my career, right? And that's when after 2 or 3 years they feel like, oh no, I don't want to
Exactly.
be in a software developer role. I would want to do something different, right? Now that part I feel will only happen once you get real life experience, right?
Mm.
And if you talk to most of these people who are software developers, they realize that they don't want to be doing this day in and out. Is because they, while doing this job again and again, they realize the intricacies of this job, and at the
Mm-hmm.
same time they also start interfacing with other functions when in a job, because you are talking to different people from different other functions, and there are certain functions which might uh, feel a lot more appealing to you, right? Which is why I see a lot of people trying to move from software engineering to product management, for example, right? Because now software engineers are interacting with product managers and they feel like, oh, like this role looks a lot better because it's a lot more dynamic, and I don't need to be doing the same thing day in and out, again and again and again and again every day. Uh, so that's when the reality actually hits them, and that's why I always say, like, it takes uh, uh, a bit of time to really understand what you would really enjoy doing for the long term. It does not come right, right out of college, right? It takes some kind of corporate experience, some real world experience for you to realize what is it that you would want to do, for like for the longer haul. Yeah.
So, how was your time at Harvard? Like when you were in Kharagpur, you said you were engaged in a lot of college stuff, like managing groups and all.
Yeah.
So, were there similar activities you were engaged in Harvard also? And for someone who is preparing, would like some tips you would like to give to the aspirants preparing for business school outside the country?
So what preparation is very different from what you would do in the business, inside business school. But if you're preparing, I think the first and foremost question to answer is, why do you want to go in for the MBA? Like, be very, very clear and articulate about that. One is, it will really help set the right expectations for yourself. And the second is, this kind of answer will reflect in your application essays as well, right? So the clearer you are with your thought process, the better off you would be. So that's one of the major things to think about when preparing for business schools abroad, especially. Um, when in business school, I think you'll have to go with the flow largely because the schedule is kind of set for you. You don't have a lot of wiggle room there. Like, classes will happen at a particular schedule, uh, and there will be kind of club events and a bunch of different events outside of classroom as well to keep you busy. So it's very, you don't have a lot of flexibility as such, right? Like, only flexibility is to figure out, okay, which clubs do you join and where do you want to focus your energies on, and or who do you want to hang out with. So but largely the schedule is going to be set for you. There's a saying that we had in our school that there are three S's, and you can only choose two out of the three S's. One is study, second is sleep, and the third is socialize. All right, you choose two out of the three. You cannot have all three. So you choose whichever two you want to actually focus on. So that's a choice that you will have to exercise when business school. Like, obviously there will be some people who will do all the three really well, but for most of the folks, they will do only two out of the three. So it's your choice, whichever of those three you want to go ahead with, right? And that pretty much kind of helps you chart out what your 2 year or 1 year journey in business school is going to be like, right? So I think the key thing to figure out again is, what are you trying to get out of that degree? Is it a better paying job? Is it the learning? Is it the connections that you want to build, which hopefully will serve you for the longer run? Or is it something else, right? So, and when I say something else, some people use this as a break to work on a side project or work on their own startup idea of sorts, or things like that as well, right? So the question is, what are you trying to get out of it? And the clearer you are, the better off you will.
So when you talk about like why, like based on like your story, like you joined HBS, you applied only there. What did you realize your why was for that MBA?
I think I when I actually joined I wouldn't say that I was absolutely clear about the why part of it. As I said, like my approach was more about what is it that I don't want to do, and I
Fair.
kind of removed options and then kind of moved forward. Um, but I think one of the things which I was kind of clear about largely was that I, from a professional standpoint or from the function standpoint, I knew that I enjoyed working closer to the consumer because in all my past gigs, I
Okay.
realized that that was something which I enjoyed doing. And the second thing which I figured out during kind of the process was also that I enjoyed the building process, right? So
Okay.
building out things. So I was always trying to search for opportunities which fit both of them, both of those particular things, right? And I wasn't clear which function would give me that because, as I said, like I did not know which also. I think the only functions that I knew were like, okay, marketing is there, right, which kind of fits that bill to a large extent.
Fair.
Because if you look at a brand manager, right, so it really helps you understand. And my eldest brother is in sales and marketing role, so I kind of knew that that is one of the things in my internship with Procter and Gamble as well. I saw the FMCG world a bit, and then I worked at Procter and Gamble as well, so I saw it, and so maybe there was a bit of a bias there, and I wanted to figure out kind of if the marketing role suits. The other thing which I started getting interested in, especially from my startup side of things before going to business school, was the media and entertainment sector, because that was also a sector which we had kind of been talking to a lot as part of our client base. And I really thought that that would be an interesting one, right? Because very consumer facing, and you are kind of building out kind of newer programs or newer shows and stuff like that, and a very different kind of building process. So I think that was the second thing which I was looking at, right? So that's pretty much what I went to business school with. And I think during the 2 years, I started kind of realizing or figuring out there are quite a few other options to consider as well. I had never looked at the tech career as such because for me at that point in time, the tech career was software engineering only, and I knew that okay, I don't want to be coding, and I'm not a coder at all. So for me, initially, I'd shut out that door, right? Which then later on, I realized that it's not just about software engineering. A tech company has a lot of other functions as well. So it was kind of a process of discovery for me. And then I felt like, okay, this is something which I feel I might enjoy. Um, and I got to know that through, so like in business school, like almost 50% of our class used to kind of go get internships or jobs through a network job search process, which means they would do it on their own. And the remaining 50% would get it from the companies which were visiting on campus. So for the on-campus process, there would be kind of information sessions, as we used to call it, where companies would just come and meet with the student, just tell about the role, about the company, and all of that. What you would have as the PPT talks or whatever is
Right.
called on campus, right? Similar to that. So at that point in time, I met up with the Zynga people, and Zynga, the gaming company. And I'd heard about Zynga, but I thought like, okay, what are they coming to business school for, right? And I think that conversation really exposed me to a whole different world, like not just about product management, but what all goes on in a tech company. And I think that's what opened my eyes towards a lot of different functions, right? So yeah, as I said, like it's a process of discovery. Like you take a bit of time to really understand how the corporate world works, what are all the different functions in each different industry, what are the nuances like. And the more you understand about each one, then you start kind of having a better understanding of what kind of industry or role might be a better fit for you. Yeah.
Cool. So I think so at that point, yeah, go on. I think you're still on mute.
I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so after all of these experiences, so the product was still in very early stage back then. So when did you actually decide that you'll go for product management and not consulting or an analyst or anything else?
Yeah, so again, there also, I think I used the approach of elimination, like things which I did not want to do, right? Um, so investment banking was very clear, or anything finance, any finance roles. I realized that one, I don't think I was good on the finance courses anyway, and I thought it was very transactional in nature. I just could not relate to a lot of the pieces.
Okay.
So I, I thought like, okay, this is not something which I would want to do again and again, just working on spreadsheets and day in and day out, right? So I just did not want to do that. So investment banking or anything finance roles was kind of out for me. Next was consulting. And consulting, I think the major question on my mind was the amount of travel required, because when I understood the work-life balance part of it, or the kind of lifestyle that you lead, like out of the 5 days in a week, 4 days you are on the client side, and the one day you are back again, and then again the next one day you are off to the client side. So, and that's one thing, and the second thing which I felt like you were always consistently like continuously switching projects, which means you're not seeing anything to closure, you're just saying a lot of stuff to the client, but you're not responsible for the execution part of it. And what I knew about myself was, at least I enjoyed the process of building, as I said, and I felt like that is an opportunity which I did not get. So again, consulting was out, finance roles were out, right? So it was all about the remaining roles there, right? And out of them, then there are certain ones which I did not have access to. Um, for example, FMCG companies in the US, those who were hiring for marketing roles, they had a citizenship requirement, and international students would not be allowed. So again, that was off the table as well for me. So yes, I think then came the remaining pieces, and that's where I started exploring, and that's where the tech industry kind of exploration started, and I discovered product as a kind of a function which I think I would enjoy.
So basically, crossing out things and like it's a very new and good way to decide upon what you want to do next. Like from all the things, crossing out what you are not getting into or what you can't do, and just going up with the things that's
Yeah, so as I said, like it's something which has worked for me. I think there are a few things which I know that I don't want to do. Because I don't would not enjoy that, and it goes back to my personality, I guess. But for the rest of the things, it's about trying out bits and pieces of it and seeing what I learn about myself, and then kind of taking up roles which both challenge me, at the same time also allow me uh, that kind of that level of flexibility to operate, and help me kind of learn something new, which leads to me enjoying that role. Yeah.
So in
that's great.
general, like product managers in today's world, like in the initial few years, it's said to be slightly more grunt work as compared to like actually going ahead and like creating features or like building innovative solutions that we aspire to do. So do you did you like fall in love with the entire process that surrounds with it, or like what was your key motivator to like hop onto product?
So I think when I learned about what this function is all about, and then I reached out to one of my mentors in business school, and he was heading product at TripAdvisor back then, and he asked me to kind of really give it a shot and try it out. And when I was trying to understand what it means to actually be a product manager, through those conversations, through the exercises that they had me work on, what I realized was there were aspects which I thought I would really enjoy, because and that's when I started connecting the dots, because I used to have a startup before going to business school. So back in 2008, so I had a startup which we folded after 1.5 years, but I did work on the product building part of it, the sales part of it, the marketing part of it, and a bunch of those different things, right? And I felt like I really enjoyed it, and I learned quite a few things, and I got an understanding that product management would give me a flavor of a bunch of those things, right? So, which made me believe that this is something which I might like. So yes, I think uh, that realization actually helped me to kind of try it out, and that's pretty much what it turned out to be, and maybe a few more things as well. Because product management, what most people think about is about building products, right, or building features, etc. But that's not the case. It is a lot more about having a mindset to figure out how do you help the business to grow, right? And if you're thinking about how to help grow the business, right, you are thinking about multiple different aspects. The first is, what does growth mean? Is it about acquiring more customers? Is it about getting more value from the existing customers? Is it about improving your profitability? All of these can signal growth, right? So once you understand that part, right, it becomes a lot easier for you to figure out, okay, if this is the objective, then how do I reach that objective, right? And that's when you start digging deeper to figure out, okay, the how part of it. And before you start building the product that can help you achieve that outcome, you have to understand then what are the opportunities that are there, what are the pain points of the users, etc. Only then you can build the corresponding solution, right? So, and I think that part resonated with me a lot, right? Because it was about not just about building things, right? It was also about a broader objective that you're trying to help a business grow, right? So yes, I think that's something which made me kind of really learn quite a few newer things which I did not have prior knowledge about, and especially when you are operating in the tech sector where the technology is changing with every single day, right? Which means something or the other is new in your world every single day, and that keeps you on your toes, and which means like you are forced to learn every single day, right? And I think that newness that this role brings, right, makes it a lot more exciting and satisfying, right? um, because you know that there are so many possibilities with newer technologies coming in, and that really helps you to kind of operate in a future state. And as product managers, I think that's the key role that they have to play. It is less about building, it is more about being in a future state, which means as a product manager, you are the person responsible for imagining what the future state can be or should be, and then you're working backwards from that future state to figure out how can I actually reach that future state. What is it that I should do today, 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line? uh, so that's why kind of it's a very exciting kind of a role, because it's like you know what the future state is going to be, you are seeing it, and now it's your responsibility to make others also see it, and then you are charting out the pathway to reach that future state, right? So that's basically what makes the role of a product manager really really exciting, because anything to do with a future element always is very exciting, because people confuse it about building stuff, but you cannot build something if you don't know like the future state that you want to reach, right? So
Yeah.
that's basically at least how I look at it.
Yeah, so like when you talk about like what are things that like say right out of undergrad school, the students who get into like say product, like what should they be looking up to? Like what is their work or what is like their job going to be like? So like you talk about how you build a hypothesis for like a future state and then you like backtrack and then build strategies to like help the company like get to some business outcomes. So what is the role of these, like, say, APMs or like product managers who've just gotten after undergrad?
So I think the first step is to become really confident in your execution skills and be able to operate independently, right? Uh, which means that you should be kind of able to work with data independently, derive insights from the data. You should be able to talk to customers independently, derive insights from the customers. You should be able to work with engineers and software developers independently, get products built and shipped out of the door. You should be able to work with your stakeholders independently and align them. So the key word here is independently, right? So when people join as APMs, the first thing is to get cross that particular milestone wherein you are able to operate independently, right? When you are able to operate independently, that means your foundational skill sets are all there. You will be able to operate independently only when you have the foundational skill sets, that of
Mhm.
writing in an articulate fashion, that of kind of aligning stakeholders, that of analyzing your data and things like that. Once you are past that stage, then what happens is, what I usually tell people is, try to figure out a zone of expertise for yourself. And a zone of expertise might be someone trying to kind of really build domain expertise around consumer facing products, someone trying to build domain expertise around search, someone trying to build domain expertise around AI products, someone trying to build domain expertise around SaaS, right? So, whatever is the domain that you are choosing, try to build a lot of domain expertise around that, right? So, then the second stage for you to kind of get to is wherein you have expertise which people will recall you for,
Right.
right? So that's the first step, is you have the credibility of operating independently and doing a good job by yourself. And the
Mhm.
second stage is basically you have a certain level of subject matter expertise for which people will reach out to you, right? Once you cross that stage, then the third stage comes in, which is more about you being able to rally other people or kind of lead other people or mentor other people, right? That's about being a coach of sorts, right? That's when you start taking up people responsibilities and you're managing a team, right? You're not just getting the most out of yourself, but you're also trying to get the most out of your team, right? So that's when you start kind of thinking a lot more from an organization standpoint. Once you've crossed the third stage, then finally the fourth stage comes in, which is you are now looking at you have a seat at the table and on the leadership side of things, and you are really having a say on where the organization is headed, right?
Mhm.
So, which is where you are really focused on the strategic side of things, making those strategic choices and all. So, it's a multi-year journey typically. So, the first couple of years you really take to start operating independently. Then to build that domain expertise, maybe another 2 to 3 years, right? And then you
Hmm.
will kind of get into people management roles and things like that. So it's a multi-year journey there, and kind of some people might take like longer. Some people might do it faster, right? But typically, on average, I've seen at least 2 to 3 years for each of those phases. Yeah.
So in general, like, say, in consulting, we follow a similar sort of a pattern, right? So you join as an associate and then you like progress towards a partner. So is the transition in product something similar with respect to, say, pay scale, or with respect to, like, say, like seniority levels, etc.?
Absolutely. So I think if you look at it, in the first few years, you are primarily gauged on your execution skills, right? Next, you are also gauged on your domain expertise, right? And your strategic thinking skills. Then you will be gauged on your organization skills or your people management skills. Then you will be gauged on your ability to collaborate across different teams and rally different teams and help the organization like think 5 years down the line and all of that, right? So the competency framework of sorts, right, also keeps changing as you move from an associate product manager to a product manager to a senior product manager to perhaps a director or a VP of product, to perhaps the chief product officer, right? So each one has a very different kind of competency level. For example, the chief product officer is not going to be gauged on their ability to write a PRD, right? An
Right.
associate product manager will be gauged on the ability to write a good PRD, right? So it's kind of the competencies keep changing, and it's important to know what is that next level of skill sets that you need to acquire, and accordingly keep moving towards that. Yeah.
So, sir, basically, you have been for so long in this field. If we ask you how's a day in the life of a product manager, how's a general day in life of a product manager?
Yeah, I think no 2 days are the same. First of all, so some days you are more in a firefighting mode, and some other days you are more in an aligning stakeholders mode. Some other days you are in a deep thinking mode. But typically, there are 4 or 5 things that you will end up doing as a product manager. Um, One is you are looking at how your current product is actually doing, right? Which means you're looking at the metrics, you're looking at the data, trying to figure out patterns, if any, trying to collect data from your consumers, feedback from your consumers, and also that's trying to gauge the health of your current product.
Mm.
The second thing is you are working on some future releases or some future state products, basically, and you're trying to figure out what needs to be built, why, the kind of value it will unlock, who you are building for, and things like planning out the execution part of it. Then the third piece which you will be doing is kind of a lot of the execution pieces, like planning out the roadmap, when it is going to get shipped, who is going
Mm.
to work on it, right? The roadmap planning, sprint planning, a bunch of those execution pieces, working with the designer, unblocking the engineer on the requirements, a bunch of different execution pieces there. The fourth thing which you would be doing is aligning stakeholders. You'll be kind of meeting up with different stakeholders, be that your engineering counterpart or your design counterpart, or maybe someone on the business side of things, or sometimes even sitting down with legal or accounting folks to unblock certain things. So it's a very multifunctional role, sometimes with the marketing teams. So you are aligning stakeholders. So that's the fourth piece. And finally, the fifth thing would be kind of spending some time learning for yourself, which is because the technologies are changing rapidly around you and there are newer things happening in the tech world. So you always need to make sure you're not falling behind and you are following what's the latest that's happening in your sector, uh, in your field, right? So you are always kind of trying to invest some time in your learning, right? Um, as you keep growing in your role, you will also have some time moving towards managing the team or managing the people. So the people management side of things being be that having one-on-ones with your direct reports or kind of uh, group discussions or brainstorming discussions and things like that, right? Or with the HR person. So that's the other piece, right? So typically these are your time buckets where a product manager is going to spend his or her time.
Understood. I've been reading up a lot on Shravan's posts on LinkedIn where he jokes about like how a day in the life of product managers go around where like they're trying to align their tech team
Hmm.
and with their requirements. But on the flip side also where you're working on say critical problem statements. So could you just like walk us through something that you did on maybe Flipkart or something that you did with TripAdvisor, like something that was actually very game changing or something that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I think there are a bunch of different things that have been rolled out now. I think even on TripAdvisor, if you go and if you just open up the any particular hotel's listing page, what you'll see is once the page loads, the calendar opens up by default. And it was a very, very small change that we had made, and it gave huge results. And if you see the calendar is built in a certain way, where the dates are actually color coded in green and yellow and red, indicating what the prices might be, and that basically acts as a trigger for your travelers to enter the dates and the reason why we made this change was because we had this insight that people who enter dates have a greater likelihood of making a booking. And it was on that insight that this change was made. So if you look at it, it's a very small change, very trivial change, but had a huge impact on the overall kind of revenue numbers as well. Similarly, like there are a bunch of I had launched something which was crowdsourcing listings because TripAdvisor is all about kind of sourcing like different listings of hotels or restaurants and things like that.
Mhm.
And obviously, we have partners and we sync from different content providers, but I wanted to explore if travelers can also help us kind of crowdsource a lot of those listings. And the way kind of, and this was back in 2012, and the usage of mobile phones was just about starting to take off, right?
Right.
And it launched kind of a functionality wherein you just have to take a picture of the place, and we would fetch all the information from the EXIF data, from the photo, the latitude, longitude, and the
Mm.
location and everything. So you don't have to fill any of that information. You just take the picture and upload it, and we would have the listing, right? So, and that led to a drastic increase in the number of listings as well, right? So, a bunch of different such things using technology to solve a particular problem and riding on insights from our customers or from the data to kind of solve a particular business problem, right? Similarly, at Flipkart, also a bunch of different things that we did right from kind of, so I used to lead the consumer experience and growth team. And in my very first year at Flipkart, I was leading the promotions team or the offers and pricing team basically. And incidentally, this is the 10th year of the Big Billion Days. And I
Ah.
was there from the very first one till the seventh one, right? So I still remember the very first Big Billion Days, and the site crashed, and I was leading the offers platform. So you can imagine what was going on, kind of in my mind. But yeah, we rebuilt the entire pricing and promotions engine, and the next year it was smooth sailing for us. No glitches, nothing. So that laid the foundation for a very kind of uh, very solid kind of a platform that we built. And it was one of the first few platforms that was being built, keeping in mind a lot of future use cases. And then a lot of other platforms also got kind of rehauled as part of the overall process of building for scale. Similarly, on the consumer experience side of things as well, vernacular support is something which we built. Shopping experience for different categories. If you see like what you see today while buying a refrigerator versus what you see while buying a dress is going to be very different. The entire engage retention side of things, the loyalty program, Flipkart Plus, a bunch of different things that we've built. There are certain products that we built which also got shut down later on. We had built something called Flipkart Video, which got shut down. We built something called Flipkart Ideas, which was more around influencer kind of led
Mm.
shopping
Mm.
and things like that, which was shut down and then brought back again, right? Uh, so yes, a bunch of different things, product exchange as a construct, right? So entire ratings and reviews that you see today on
Right.
Flipkart, my team worked on it. So a lot of the things that you see today on Flipkart, because my team was leading kind of the consumer experience charter. So anything that you are seeing on Flipkart, I think my team has had a role to play in building those things out there.
So let's divide our viewer base into three categories. The first one being a person who is just interested in knowing what product side is, exploring things. A second
Mhm.
being a person who is interested in product management as a process, like what all it requires and understanding the whole of the process. And the third category being the person who wants to seek for internships and placements in this field. So if we ask you to like give advices to all the three of them, so what would be your take on this?
So first is if you're looking to like explore more about product management, though, I think the best way to do it would be to talk to seniors of yours who are already in product management roles and try to understand what this role is all about. Just set your expectations right. And second is start reading up on kind of articles on the TechCrunch or The Verge, just to see is this something which you enjoy learning more about, right? Because if you're not enjoying the process of learning about new technologies or new products, etc., then most likely you will not enjoy this role, right? So I think if you do these two things, one is talk to kind of your seniors who are already in a product role, try to understand what this role is all about, what is it that they do, what are the things that they like, what are the things that they hate, then at least you set the right expectation. The second is maybe start reading up on things happening in the tech world and see if you are enjoying that process of learning about new things, right? For those who are a bit more serious and I think who know that this is a career that they want to kind of go deeper into, I think the next step would be to kind of really start focusing on building out your skill sets. And uh, I think an easy way to actually start doing that is to really take up a structured course, and wherein you are really learning the industry relevant skill sets in a very structured manner, right? And that will also help you understand if this is something which you would want to do for the long term, right? Because over say 3 or 4 months, if you're really spending that time or effort, you can actually realize that, okay, is this something which I would love doing, or is this something which I don't see myself doing for the longer run, right? Because in this case, you would be learning about it every single day, and you have to figure out, is this something which I'm doing, learning or not, enjoying or not, right? And obviously, when you're talking about courses, I think obviously NextLeap has very famous product manager fellowship. So for those of you listening in, so you can always check that out. A lot of IIT Roorkee folks have taken it. So and the third segment of people is like those who now have picked up the skills and are looking to break into a product role. I think the key thing to figure out is how do you showcase those skills that you already have, which is where focusing on building out your portfolio, building out certain side projects, right, which bring out those skill sets. I think that the role requires is an important activity to think about, right? Because if you are kind of showcasing those skill sets through artifacts like you've done a product teardown, you've done a case study, you've written a PRD, you've built out a side project, you've done some wireframes or built out prototypes. It really helps the hiring manager to know that you really have those skill sets versus just a one liner on a resume saying, okay, I have these skill sets, right? So people want to see whether you really have it or not. And you need to put that focus on showcasing that you really have those skill sets. So a lot more focus on building out your portfolio. And obviously, kind of practicing for those interviews because uh, doing a lot of mock interviews really helps you and really sets you up for that real life interview, and it simulates that kind of situation and helps you kind of get better at it. So yes, I think that's basically what I would suggest for those 3 seconds.
You mentioned you talk about how like building skill sets for even the second base, and then uh, you spoke about how these side projects help managers figure out what are the skill sets that these students have. What sort of skill sets are you like talking about? Like, could you just like name a few of them so that like
Yeah,
students who actually want to get into product like could look into that
yeah,
segment clearly?
yeah. So few of the skill sets which I'll talk about might sound a bit vague, but I'll try to kind of decode it for you guys. So first one, for example, is curiosity. And why that is very important is because in a product manager's role, you will be working on solving certain problems, and you cannot solve a problem unless and until you go deeper. And you will not go deeper to understand the problem if you are not being curious enough, right? So that's why curiosity as a trait is something which is often sought after by a lot of hiring managers. Now, how can you actually showcase that you are curious enough, and which is where something like a product teardown or something like that really helps you, right? To showcase
Okay.
that I have actually kind of deconstructed the entire product, and I'm actually trying to showcase that curiosity side of things. Second thing which hiring managers look for is a very strong data orientation. Again, you will be using data day in and day out. To actually aid in the problem solving process. So it's important for you to familiarize yourself with the data side of things, be that writing SQL queries or working with data sets to make sense out of that data. So if you can get hands-on practice with SQL and showcase that you have been writing some queries and on a particular data set and what you've done, right? It really goes a long way to portray the fact that you have those data skills that are required for the role. The third are writing skills. You will be writing product requirements documents. You will be writing a bunch of stuff, right? Product notes, etc. And people want to make sure that you know how to express in a very articulate manner without writing in a very long drawn fashion or not capturing the requirements well enough. So get into a writing habit. That's a very important trait as well. Fourth is you will be analyzing markets and things like that, for example, or going deeper into a particular industry, right? So understanding what the competition is doing, a competitive landscape analysis, and things like that. Those kind of analysis skills are very important as well. And finally, the last one is being able to derive insights from your customers, which means that you should be comfortable talking to customers. You should be able to figure out how to derive insights from those customer interviews and all of that, right? To be able to empathize with your customers. So these are kind of some of the kind of major things which hiring managers would be looking for. But the topmost thing is what say is like clarity and depth of thought, which means you should know exactly how you are going to progress in a step-by-step fashion, and you would know exactly how deep to go, right? So you would not leave things at a superficial level. You would go deep enough to understand the problem and deep enough to lay out the solution in terms of all the requirements and all. So clarity and depth of thought is what kind of the hiring managers are looking for, which kind of brings together all of these skill sets that I talked about.
Cool, understood. Let's talk about side projects for a while. I've seen NextLeap's learn in public challenges. I've seen all of those things. So other than these, how do you source or how do you start up on a side project on your own? How do you just get started in that direction?
So I think the first thing is it starts with that curious mindset, I would say, right? We use so many products on a day-to-day basis. For example, let's use the example of the most common product we use, like everyone would be using it every day, is WhatsApp, right? Now, if you see, WhatsApp launched something new very recently called channels. Now,
Channels.
a curious mind would actually try to figure out, okay, why did WhatsApp launch channels? How have they built it out? What is the user flow like? What happens? And all of that, right? And lay that out, right? So it's about, it stems from very keen observation to begin with, observation of the products that you're using on a daily basis. And that can be a very good starting point for anyone to actually move forward on this path. The second thing would be kind of look at problems that you are facing yourself and try to figure out a solution for that. For example, let's say you are facing a problem today on what, like, you have to decide whether you will eat in the hostel mess or not every day, right? Based on what is the food that is getting cooked, right? Now, instead of going to the canteen and figuring out and all of that, right, is there a more optimal way for you to figure that out, right? So, can you come up with a solution which can help all borders to do that? Please don't do it because your hostel mess authorities will be up in arms. But yeah, I think that's an example for you to kind of think about, right? Like, what are the problems that you are seeing around you, and can you actually think of a solution and try to come up with a solution there, right? And that can actually turn into a side project of sorts, right? It doesn't need to make money or anything like that. It should solve a problem, right? And it should solve a problem for a certain segment of users, even if that segment is a segment of one, which is yourself. That's absolutely fine, right? The first thing is where most people kind of get stuck is, okay, they're trying to really create a much bigger impact right from the word go. No, like first is try to solve a problem for yourself, right? If you're able to solve a problem for yourself, then you are in a much better position to solve a problem for the others, right? um, so I would say, like, it starts with kind of very keen observation to begin with, and then trying to figure out what all are the problems that you are facing today and how can you solve those problems, and then moving forward from there.
Understood. So, like other firms or like other fields or other domains like consulting and all of these other fields are slightly having some sort of an overhang from this entire recession in general. But in general, do you think that product management, which is still in the boom, has reached some sort of saturation with respect to, like, say, job market or prospects? Or like, is the field going to boom more? Like, what's the future of product management?
See, a very simple way to kind of think about it, which is why I always say, like, think about what the role of the product manager is, right? And the way I define the role of a product manager is the product manager's responsibility is to help the business grow, right? The moment you keep that as the objective, right, you are not constraining yourself to building out the product only. You are also looking at things beyond that, right? And which is a very important thing to keep in mind as you think about the evolution of product management, because um, product management, like the closest analogy that I can draw to another function is in the field of marketing. You have the role of a brand manager. If you look at what a brand manager does, they're responsible for the growth of the brand, right? The brand manager is not responsible for running ads. Okay, they're responsible for the growth of the brand, and that objective is never going to go away, right? Every company will want their product to grow, right? And you would want someone to drive that growth, right? Now, the reason why I feel like this role is going to stay, and only there might be an evolution to the role in terms of the responsibilities of this person, but this function is never going to go away, because you can never say that that objective has been achieved, right? Or someone else is going to drive the growth of the company, or AI is going to drive the growth of the company. Wouldn't happen, right? It's a very human focused role, right? AI can never help align stakeholders, right? AI can never help you to figure out what is, like, which problem to choose out of all the different problems that you have. AI could never be able to figure out a 5 year kind of strategy for the company and things like that, right? So those are very human centered kind of roles, and which is why this role is going to only keep on evolving and growing from here, and more and more companies will kind of have product managers, because it is not like we will stop using products. We will use more and more digital products as we move forward, right? But there will be certain products which we will use more of, and there will be certain products which we'll use less of, right? And the major kind of distinguishing factor between the two would be how those products are built, right? And guess who's the person who is in charge of kind of building those products in the right way? It's the product manager. So that objective, as long as it is there, and my guess is that objective will always be there, the role of the product manager is only going to kind of be there across more and more companies.
We were talking about how, like, say, these side projects could be anything related to what we actually personally feel and how we could build stuff. At that point in time, what's your advice to these people who are looking for something like a structure which NextLeap did? So I have two questions here. One, why did you start with NextLeap? Like, what was that initial kick for you to, like, transition from being a product manager towards teaching product? And what do you think is, like, the future for NextLeap in general?
Sure. So during my kind of career so far, I think there are a couple of problems which I have faced again and again, and I've seen so many other people also face the same problem. One is that of hiring, right? Hiring good talent has been really, really hard not just in product, but in design and engineering across the board, right? And ask anyone in a tech company, and they will tell you how hard it is to find really good talent, right? So that's one. And the second thing was that I personally felt my own learning was very unstructured after getting into the corporate world. Unlike school or college, where there was a set curriculum and a set syllabus, and you would move from one step to the next in a sequential manner. In the corporate world, you don't have anyone to guide you there, right? Like what to learn and how to learn, where to learn, and all of that. That structure is missing, and which has been something which has troubled me quite a bit, right? Um, and as I kind of was reflecting on it, what I realized was, if you think about it at a very broad level, the labor piece of it, right, is a very critical pillar of any economy, and especially in a growing economy in India. And if you look at it, the entire labor market overall is kind of broken. There are three pieces to that labor market. One is skilling the labor supply, right, which is making sure that the available labor kind of has the required skills required by the industry, right? And especially when you're looking at it from a perspective of the labor market in the tech sector, right? So that skilling part of it is a very big pain point today, because obviously college does not teach you any of these skill sets required for these new age roles, because your curriculum has not been updated for the last 30, 40, 50 years, right? Um, so that's a major gap there, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you would know this. Like, your IT curriculum, I think, was last revised, I guess, in the 1950s or 1960s. I think 1960s, if I'm not wrong. Right? And post that, there hasn't been much change. So that is one piece of the labor market. The second piece is that of hiring, right? Wherein how do you actually find the right talent for that role, right? So that's another big piece of the puzzle there as well. The way the hiring process works today is still very resume based, and we
Right.
know that resumes are not the best way to actually portray the skill sets that someone has, right? So that's the second part of the problem. And the third part is basically talent development, which means, like, after you've gotten into a role, how do you keep learning, right? Because it cannot be that, like, in our parents' generation, it perhaps held true that, okay, whatever you learned in college or and post that, you never invested anything in your learning, right? And you build out a career, and most of our parents would have worked in the same company for 20, 30, 40 years, and they
Right.
retired from the same company as well. For us, in our generation, it's very, very different. The technology is changing very rapidly, right? And you want to kind of make sure you're updating yourself every now and then. That continuous learning part is very important. But if you look at it from an organization perspective, in most organizations, L&D or learning and development teams, it's a 2 or 3 member team, if that team even exists, right? So most organizations are not able to train the employees in the best possible manner, right? So that's a very big problem in the talent development. And if the talent is not developed, then what happens is that talent is not able to handle the complexities of a growing business, and then the business does not grow as fast as it can, right? So if you see, these are the three major pillars of the labor market, and that's basically what NextLeap is kind of trying to solve for. And we have started off with the very first pillar, which is the skilling part of it, and the idea is to kind of gradually go to the other two pillars as well. Yeah. So the broader objective is to fix a broken labor market.
Understood. I think so. That's a very, like, it's been heading in the right direction. I have seniors of mine who taken up the course, who actually learned a lot. And at that point in time, I see how it's making a visible impact. A follow-up question on that would be as to how do these people like get upskilled with respect to, say, hirings and internships or like placements? Like somebody who does not have, say, access to NextLeap, or somebody is not able to like afford to do a cohort, how do
Yeah.
they go ahead and do stuff like that? Like, do you have anything,
Yeah.
any sort of advice for them?
See, I always say, like, a course is never going to be a silver bullet, and its course is not required per se, right? The Where a course or a structured course like NextLeap actually helps you is to bring in that accountability and bring in that structure, right? Now, education largely is a motivation problem if you think about it, right? It is not a content problem. There is abundant content out there, right? Largely where people struggle is that they are not able to find that intrinsic motivation to learn, right? And that's where a course with a particular structure, with a particular set of deadlines, etc., keeps you honest and keeps you accountable and keeps you moving along the way, right? That's the major benefit of the course, right? If the course is well designed, okay. It is not mandatory for someone to take up the course, right? If they feel like they are intrinsically motivated by themselves, then they can actually kind of put in the hours to figure out the content and do it by themselves, right? It might take a bit more time, right, to find out where to study, what to study, and all of that, but not impossible, right? Uh, but most people, like as humans, we are lazy, right? We don't want to spend that much amount of time to actually figure out what to learn, where to learn, etc. We want things to be handed over to us, right?
Right.
Because that's pretty much how our educational system has trained our minds to operate. So, which is where the courses come in. Okay. But to your question, if someone does not want to take up a course, and I think the best way would be to first figure out what to study, right? Um, all the different concepts, and then kind of try to search the internet and really figure out kind of what those concepts even mean, and then try to apply it, right, on their own. Right now, as you can imagine, it will be quite a bit of work, not impossible, but it will be quite a bit of work, especially when you're trying to do it all by yourself.
Fair.
So, but I think I've heard so many stories of people who have done that, right? So it's very much possible. It comes down to the motivation levels, very honestly. If people are very motivated, they will figure out a way. For people who kind of need a bit more push, for them, I feel a course is a much better option, especially if you are looking to get to an outcome in a faster, in a much faster manner. Yeah.
That is a lot of great information, sir. I am sure all of our audience would be uh, highly, uh, highly, like, highly benefited from all of these views of yours. So, anything you'd like to add from your journey that you wanted to convey to our listeners?
No, I think thank you so much for having me, first of all, on this podcast. And always good to be talking to the young, bright minds and these IITs. And the only thing which I'll say is try to kind of really figure out what is it that you're enjoying, especially in these years in college, and try to kind of enjoy the campus life, and because these will most likely be one of your best years of your life. So enjoy it while it lasts, and at the same time also try to figure out what is it that you like doing, what is it that your strengths are, and kind of build that exposure to what the industry needs, and start working towards that. And as long as you do that, I think you'll be fine, right? So don't worry too much about that first job, because you're most likely going to quit that first job in 1 or 2 years. Uh, but at the same time, think long term about a career that you want to build versus the job that you want to have.
That
Thank you,
sounds
sir. It was
awesome.
great to
Thank you
have
so
you.
much. Thank you so
Sure.
much for
Thank you so much
being
for
here,
having me.
Arun.
Sure.